I want to thank y'all for having us. My name's Mike Roberts. This is my wife, Tracy. And if y'all don't mind, I'd like to say one thing while it really has nothing to do with the oil spill, while I have a Canadian audience. And it has to do with another big disaster that happened down. And y'all have to excuse me because I'm not a public speaker. So I'm about to have a heart attack right now. But I'm just a fisherman. But I'll get through this. But the other disaster that happened was Hurricane Katrina, and it was huge. And it made landfall 30 miles from my home. So the wind had barely quit blowing, and people were drowning. And the very first people that were there to rescue people, and this is a true story, was the Canadian Royal Mounted Police. And our state police was 100 miles away in Baton Rouge, and they hadn't even moved on it yet. And the Canadian Mounties were there rescuing people. And they came all the way from Canada to South Louisiana to rescue people. And I always thought, one word just comes to my mind, is character. That tells me Canadian people have a lot of character. So I would just like to say thank you while I have a Canadian audience.
My name's Tracy Kins. Mike and I are from Barataria, Louisiana. It is about 30 miles southwest of New Orleans, and it is a fishing community in the estuary, in the swamps. Our community, our economy in our community is totally reliant on the natural resources. We are a fishing community, commercial fishermen. We have charter recreational businesses and tourism businesses. This is a picture of where we live. That's the hunting camp, which is just down the bayou from our house, which is a little north of that. Our community is located approximately 40 miles from the Gulf of Mexico. And there is nothing between our community and the Gulf of Mexico but millions of acres of bayous and bays and lakes. It's just a huge, beautiful estuary. So I just put a couple pictures together. It's not working. Where am I supposed to be? Oh, there it is. That's behind our house. Part of the bayou is behind the house. As I said before, we're dependent on recreational and commercial fishing, tourism stuff. Those are the types of boats that we use to fish. We fish shrimp, crabs, blue crabs, finfish of different sorts. But all of our vessels, the majority of our fishermen are inland, small vessel, family fishermen. Whoops. Those three boats, that's the Palmazanos, which it's him, his son, and his brother-in-law. That's their boats. Everything is family owned and operated in our community. We don't have factory trawlers in Louisiana. We have some bigger Gulf boats, but the majority of our fishermen operate these type of boats in the inland waters. This is every year, just before the shrimp season in the spring, we have what's called a Blessing of the Fleet Festival, where this is in our community, a swing bridge to get across the bayou, and everybody decorates their boats and takes them to be blessed in preparation for the shrimp season, the fishing season to start. That's our boat. We have 5 children and 17 grandchildren, most of whom are on that boat right now in chairs. most of the people in our community stay in the community. 4 of our children and 11 of our grandchildren are in our community. Our oldest son lives outside of the community but comes to visit often. That blessing picture was taken April 20th of this year, the day that the BP rig exploded in the Gulf of Mexico, killing 11 men and starting one of the biggest oil spills to have happened in the Gulf of Mexico or in this country ever, in the United States ever. We had an early opening of our shrimp season in the water because of the explosion, and we didn't know if the oil was going to come into the inside waters, into our fishing grounds. And so our Wildlife and Fisheries opened it, and we always do shrimp boils. So that's what this is. And that's Amber, who wanted to have all the shrimp to herself. But we have been for a long time our fishermen in our community. The oil companies came to Louisiana in the 20s, and it was our fishermen who tried to blockade them, to stop them from dredging the oil field canals through our marsh in our estuary. And they tried to hold them off with machine guns because they knew if they started dredging those canals that our land would start to wash away, that salt water would come in and kill our marshes. And they have fought with the oil companies. It's like a love-hate relationship where we are, because that's all we have. We have oil or we have fishing. And so the fishing goes up and down according to cycles of the fish or weather conditions. Temperature, salinities impact how many fish you have, how many shrimp you have. This is an example of, our fishermen, our Association of Family Fishermen formed this Louisiana Bayoukeeper to work on water quality and habitat protection, because we were seeing our estuary wash away. We were seeing water quality decline and nobody doing anything about it. And we knew that you could take every commercial fisherman and recreational fisherman out of the water, and if you do nothing about your water quality and protecting that habitat, that estuary, then you will have a major fisheries collapse, because the fisheries cannot survive without good water quality and habitat. 90% of the fish, marine life, in the Gulf of Mexico spends some portion of its life in our estuary. So it's critical habitat. Well, that happened in 2006 or 2007. A tugboat ran over a wellhead, a brand new wellhead.
That was a 10,000 barrel spill. From 20 to 100 barrels, they don't even report that in Louisiana. You have to understand, where we live, oil and gas is king. We have hundreds of communities along our coast, not unlike British Columbia, all fishing communities. And there's not one community on our coast anymore that doesn't have oil and gas in it in one way, shape, or form. They're there. They're there, unloading, loading, they're running service companies out of it. So when they come to town, before long, it's not just one place. They take over the whole place. In South Louisiana, there's only two things you can do for a living anymore. You either work for the oil companies or you fish. That's basically it. There's a little bit of tourism, there's a little bit of recreational fishing, but the predominant employer in South Louisiana is oil and gas. So, you know, I don't know what's going to happen in British Columbia, but 30 supertankers visit coastal Louisiana a week. 30 of them. 20 of them unload at Louisiana Offshore Oil Port, and the rest get lightered in what they call lightering areas. They'll take the supertanker and they'll take the oil off and put it on smaller tankers, And those smaller tankers can go up the Mississippi River. We have 80 chemical plants and refineries between the mouth of the Mississippi River and Baton Rouge. They call where we live Cancer Alley because the cancer rate is so high there. And I'm 51 years old, and I don't know a time when I did not see oil and gas in coastal Louisiana. I've grown up with it. And I have all these grandkids, and I don't know what their futures are going to hold because of oil and gas being in coastal Louisiana. But, you know, when they come, they offer good jobs, you know, well-paying jobs, secure jobs, you have benefits, but there's a trade-off. You know, they'll come to town and they'll improve your lifestyle. They really will. But the trade-off is going to be your health and your environment. And they can't get around it. They can sugarcoat it all they want. They do a lot of damage. Damage, damage, damage. That's what oil and gas has done to Louisiana in my lifetime. It's disappearing at an alarming rate. Now, I'm not, you know, I'll be the first one to say we can't not do without oil and gas. I can't shrimp without diesel. I can't drive my truck to deliver shrimp without diesel. But they can do a way, way better job than they do. I've seen probably 100 oil spills in my lifetime living in coastal Louisiana. And, you know, if you guys want to live with that, well, then have oil and gas come to town. And that's the truth.
And this is Bayoukeeper, which is just to the southwest, 5 minutes from my house. A tugboat hit that wellhead at the bottom there in the middle of the night, did not call it in, didn't stop, and it spewed oil into Barataria all night long until a recreational fisherman going out in the morning saw it and reported it. It was later that day before the Coast Guard even really showed up out there. We contacted every media person we could think of, and they would not come out. They would not do a story on it. It wasn't big enough. That area, that oil went from there all the way up to Lake Salvador to the north of our community and all the way south to Little Lake, which covers, probably about 25 miles. And they didn't think that was a big enough thing to report on. That water bottom, because they come out there, they sink all the oil with dispersants to the bottom, that water bottom was dead for 3 years. You couldn't fish there.